It was the summer of '99 when I first saw him. Thumb jutted out by the side of a cracked highway that ribboned through the heart of Nevada. I've always had a soft spot for hitchhikers. My rig, Old Bessie, rumbled beneath me. A beast of steel and smoke, the only companion I'd had for miles. He climbed into the cab with a nod, his eyes hooded under the brim of a tattered hat. "Much obliged," he rasped, voice like gravel. The heat was oppressive, the kind of dry that sucked the moisture from your bones, but he didn't seem to sweat. We talked some, about the road mostly. He mentioned towns I'd never heard of, ones that didn't show up on any map I owned. By the time dusk painted the sky a deep crimson, we'd reached the outskirts of a little town called Mercy. "This is where I get off," he said, pointing to a dusty turnout. "Sure thing," I replied, slowing Bessie down, but as he stepped out, he turned and fixed me with a stare that sent a shiver down my spine. "A word of warning," he muttered. "You shouldn't have stopped for me." Before I could ask what he meant, he slammed the door shut and vanished into the twilight. I shook off the eerie feeling and put the pedal down. That's when things started to go wrong. That night, I saw him again. In the rearview mirror, his figure flickered in and out, like a faulty bulb, always at the edge of my vision. Every time I blinked, he was closer, but when I turned to look directly, there was nothing but the long stretch of lonely highway. The apparitions grew worse. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of tapping on the glass. It was always him, standing outside Bessie, his eyes hollow pits of darkness. I'd rev the engine and bolt down the road, but he was always a step behind, never tiring, never stopping. Accidents began to plague my route. A sudden fog would roll in, blindingly thick, causing near misses and skids that left my heart racing. Once, a shadow darted in front of the truck, causing me to swerve and nearly jackknife. When I regained control, there was nothing there. No sign of any living thing. I tried to ditch the truck, thinking it was cursed, but the rental company found nothing wrong with it. Each time I set off with Bessie, the horrors renewed. Whispers filled the cab, speaking in tongues or sometimes calling my name, stretching it into a grotesque caricature of itself. Desperate, I sought help from a local priest. He listened with a furrowed brow as I recounted my tale. "You've been marked," he said solemnly, "by a spirit of the road. It's rare, but it happens to those who see what they shouldn't." He gave me a small silver crucifix and instructed me to hang it on the rearview mirror. It might help, but if it's a powerful spirit, you might have to make amends directly. That night, I drove back to Mercy. I found the turnout where I'd dropped him off and waited. As the clock struck midnight, he appeared. This time, I didn't flinch. "Why are you doing this to me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper over the howl of the wind. "You carry me, whether you want to or not," he said, his voice echoing as if from a great depth. "But you can be free of me. Do for others what you did for me. Stop for them. Listen to them. Carry their burdens as you have carried mine." And with that, he faded, leaving me alone with the whistling wind. From that day, I made it my mission. Every hitchhiker, every traveler with a story, I stopped for them. I listened, and slowly, the hauntings ceased. The road became just a road again, but sometimes when the sun sets just right over the horizon, I swear I can see him out there, nodding in approval as old Bessie roars down the highway. The route was supposed to shave a couple of hours off my drive. That's what the old map I found under the seat of my rig claimed anyway. It was a narrow, winding path that cut through an old forest, the kind of place where the trees are so dense, daylight struggles to touch the ground. I should have known better. The air grew thick as I turned onto the path, the canopy closing above me like the lid of a coffin. It wasn't long before the shadows began to stir, whispering secrets in a language forgotten by time. The deeper I drove into the forest, the more I felt eyes upon me. Not the eyes of animals. The forest was eerily silent, devoid of wildlife. No, these were older, darker watchers, their gaze heavy on my skin. Suddenly, the engine sputtered and died, leaving me stranded in the creeping fog that slithered in through the cracks of my cab. That's when the visions started. First, it was the face of my father, his eyes hollow, voice accusing. "You left us," he hissed, his form dissolving into the mist. I tried to shout back, to explain, to apologize, but the words caught in my throat, strangled by my own regrets. Then came my high school sweetheart, the one that got away, her face twisted in pain. "Why didn't you save me?" she cried, blood dripping from her lips as she vanished before my eyes. Each vision tore at my heart, a parade of personal horrors that left me gasping for air. But the worst was yet to come. From the gloom, a towering figure emerged, its form shifting and changing, now a gnarled tree, now a twisted, humanoid silhouette. Its voice was the rustle of dead leaves, and it spoke a curse, chilling me to the bone. "Your heart is heavy, trucker. You carry the weight of many sorrows. Let the forest consume your fears." I knew then I was facing the ancient spirit of the forest, awakened by my trespass. It wanted to devour my soul, feed on my darkest fears. Desperation took hold, and I fumbled for anything that might save me. My hand brushed against an old St. Christopher medal, my mother's, left in the cab long ago for safe travels. Clutching it, I found my voice. "No!" I shouted, the word a defiant echo in the oppressive silence. "I won't let my fears define me." With each word, the apparitions wavered, the forest's grip loosening. The metal grew warm in my hand, a beacon of light in the darkness. I recited every prayer I knew, my voice growing stronger. Slowly, the visions dissipated, and the oppressive presence receded, slinking back into the shadows from which it had sprung. The engine coughed to life as if no darkness had touched it. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I reached the end of that cursed path and emerged into the light of dawn. Now, I stick to the highways, the well-worn paths of the mundane world. But sometimes, at night, I hear the whisper of the leaves, a reminder of the night the forest nearly claimed me. And I clutch the metal a little tighter, grateful for the light that guides me through the darkness. The ice roads of the north are unforgiving, crystal veins stretching across the frozen wilderness. As a long-haul trucker, these roads had become my winter haunts, pathways etched into my very soul. The isolation could drive a man mad, but the solitude was my sanctuary. At least until that night, when the temperature dipped below the cursed -40 degrees Celsius, and the world turned into a silent, icy tomb. I remember the dashboard's glow, the only light in the engulfing darkness when I first saw her. A spectral figure in the beam of my headlights, standing firm against the howling wind that seemed to pass right through her. She was draped in what looked like a tattered nightgown, her face pale, almost translucent, eyes hollow, staring into mine with an eerie intensity. I hit the brakes hard, the rig groaning beneath me as it slid perilously close to her before stopping. Heart pounding, I opened the door to the bitter air, but the figure had vanished, as if swept away by the gusts that moaned across the tundra. "Hello." My voice felt small in the vast white expanse. No answer. Just the echo of my own words against the ice. Shaken, I continued on. Every creak of my truck sounding like a whisper from beyond. As the miles stretched on, so did my nerves, frayed thin until there she was again, appearing suddenly in the middle of the road, as if materialized from the thin, frosty air. This time, when I stopped, she spoke, her voice a chilling murmur over the roar of the idling engine. "Turn back, or join me in the ice." The warning hung heavy in the freezing air, her figure fading like a mist, leaving me with nothing but the eerie echo of her words. Curiosity overcame fear, and I couldn't turn back. Not yet. I needed to understand why she haunted these icy roads at the next town I asked around, showing a sketch I'd drawn of her face. An old-timer at the local diner finally nodded, his eyes clouding over with memory. "Aye, that'd be Mary Beth," he said, voice quavering. "Lost her to the ice about 10 years ago. Nasty business, truck went right through the lake. They say she still warns folks when the road's about to claim another." His words sent a shiver colder than the wind outside through me. The mystery of her death was clear, but how to prevent my own fate? That night, as I approached the same stretch of road, the air grew inexplicably colder, the ice beneath my wheels groaning ominously. Then she appeared one final time, pointing off to the side of the road. Trusting her, I veered off the plotted course, driving carefully across the uncertain surface. Moments later, the ice where I had been about to travel gave way with a thunderous crack, the dark waters of the lake swallowing what would have been my icy tomb. I parked at the edge, heart hammering, watching the gaping hole in the ice, when suddenly, the air warmed slightly, and the ghostly figure of Mary Beth appeared beside my window. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile, then faded into the night, her curse lifted with the saving of my life. Now, when I drive the ice roads, I carry her story with me, a talisman against the solitude and the dangers hidden beneath the frozen silence. They say the North remembers, and thanks to Mary Beth, I'll never forget. The engine hummed a low, mournful tune as I rolled into the dusty crossroads just past midnight. Business had been brutal, debts mounting like the miles on my old rig's odometer. They said if you were desperate enough, you could make a deal at the crossroads. So there I was, a fool ready to bargain with shadows for a shot at salvation. He appeared from the darkness like a wraith, features shrouded, yet distinctly sharp under the moon's watchful eye. "What do you seek?" His voice was like gravel, chilling yet compelling. "Success," I confessed, the word heavy with a trucker's hope and desperation. "I want my company to thrive, no matter the cost." "Ah, the cost," he mused, a sinister grin unfolding. "I can grant you what you seek, but the price is steep. The souls of those you hold dear, and ultimately, your own." I hesitated, the gravity of his words sinking in like quicksand. But despair can poison a man's judgment. "Do it," I urged, driven by a reckless greed. The pact was sealed with a shake of a hand colder than winter's heart, and the figure vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared. Almost instantly, business boomed. Contracts poured in, my fleet expanded, and wealth accumulated like never before. But success is a shadow that often cloaks darker truths. One by one, tragedy struck my loved ones. My wife, ever the loving heart, succumbed to a sudden illness. My brother, my closest confidant, lost in a horrific accident. Each death a blow, each contract signed with a hidden clause of misery. It didn't take long for me to see the pattern, the cruel payment extracted by the dark figure. My heart, once swollen with pride, was now laden with a harrowing guilt. I returned to the crossroads, this time under a storm-swept sky, the air thick with my impending doom. "Enough!" I shouted into the howling wind, my voice a mix of fury and fear. "I revoke our deal! Take your success! Give them back their lives!" Through the roar of the storm, he materialized, his eyes glinting with malice. "A deal once struck cannot be unmade," he intoned ominously. "But perhaps there is something else you desire." "Release them," I pleaded. "Take my soul now. Spare them further pain." The figure considered, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "Very well. But know this. The reversal comes with a price of its own. You will remain here, at these crossroads, a guardian of paths never taken, a warning to those who dare to trade with fate." Agony and relief mingled as I accepted this new pact, a sacrifice to undo the horrors birthed by my greed. As he vanished once more, my spirit dissolved from my body, bound to the dusty crossroads. Now I linger, a spectral figure cloaked in the shadows of regret, whispering warnings to those tempted by desperation. My business thrived, then withered away without me. But the souls of my loved ones found peace, and I, forever at the crossroads, watch over the lonely roads, a guardian against the darkness from which I once sought fortune.